that works. Yeah.
Oh.
Awesome. I guess we good to go back there? Ready to start? Awesome. We're live. Okay.
That is a thumbs up.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome to One-Click Fleet Security with Fleetsmith. Quick introductions are in order. I'm Zack. This is Frank. I'm the founder and CEO of Fleetsmith. Before Fleetsmith, I was the IT director at Wikia, which is now known as Fandom. Some of you may have heard of that. It's one of the internet's biggest pop culture communities online. And I've actually met a bunch of the people in this room already. But if we haven't met yet, I would love to chat. So please come down and check out our booth downstairs, and or we can just chat after the talk.
My name is Frank Yang. I'm a product manager at Fleetsmith. It's also been great meeting a bunch of you already. And I'm really excited to show you guys a little more about what we do and answer any questions that you guys might have.
Awesome, yeah. So this is one-click fleet security with Fleetsmith, but kind of at a high level, Fleetsmith was created to help MacAdmins, among other things, become IT and security heroes. And so I just want to talk about what that means. Fleetsmith is a really simple yet powerful SaaS Apple device management product that automates onboarding, fleet intelligence, management, and security. And we'll talk about a little of those as well. So being a security hero is tough, and just IT in general is tough, I think, because often a lot of the communication with colleagues and interactions happen when things go wrong. It's just part of the job, I think. When everything's going great, that's just sort of how it's expected to be, right? And so that's why today's talk is about kind of helping share an understanding of the security landscape, learning how you can put security best practices on autopilot, with the goal of freeing yourself up to do fulfilling, transformative work that you really love doing. So time's kind of a limited resource. There was a time management session earlier that was awesome, and so we're kind of here to help, and we're going to show how to put a lot of these best practices on autopilot. What we'll cover. So we're going to cover the security landscape today. What does it look like out there in the big, dangerous world? And I also wanted to say, one of the reasons specifically that I wanted to give this talk is because we're all kind of in the same boat, here. And so if you already know how to do some of the stuff you're seeing, that's great. Then please help me and us evangelize security best practices to people who don't yet know. Like, that's fine. And so if you don't already know how to do some of this stuff, then if you just learn one thing, then I feel like it was worth it. So let's cover the security landscape first. Three-part super quick summary. Attacks are frequent and increasing. Attackers aren't discriminating against who they attack. They're getting everybody. And attacks are really costly to the victims. So a really key report kind of in this area is the Verizon DBIR, the Data Breach Investigations Report. And in the report, it talks about 53,000 incidents with just over 2,200 confirmed data breaches. An incident, for quick definitions, an incident is you're compromised, whereas the breach is actual confirmed exposure, right? So that's the difference that we're talking about here. Which industries were victimized? All of them. Accommodation, hospitality, education, healthcare, public sector, you name it, it was breached, right? It's a universal problem. And who's behind the breaches? I think this is super interesting. 3/4 of the breaches were perpetrated by outsiders. So as we'll see, there are different ways to think about how attackers are trying to get us, and just knowing that the vast majority are perpetrated by outsiders is helpful in figuring out a solution. 48% featured hacking, 30 included malware, and 11 were physical access, right? They actually could touch the device. So again, thinking about how the attackers are actually carrying out these attacks is important in terms of figuring out how we want to prevent and remediate them. So again, who did they attack? Anyone here from healthcare, public sector, education, or SMB? Okay, so pretty much everybody. So we're SMB, we're a target too, right? This is everybody again. And 50%, almost 50% of the attacks were non-POS malware via malicious email. That's on employee devices, right? It's not a POS system, that's actually a device. So a lot of this is about securing your endpoints. And lastly, 68% took months or longer to discover, right? So yeah, it's great if you can figure it out after the fact, but there's a lot of damage that's done immediately and then in the months after. So really prevention is kind of the name of the game here, right? Cool. So the second report I want to call out is the state of cybersecurity in SMB. So 600 people surveyed. SMB means 100 to 1,000 employees. And the key thing I want to get across here is the cost. They analyze how much it costs these orgs to fix the breach. 880,000 to 1.2 million per breach. So super costly. And if you can do something that's relatively inexpensive to prevent this, that's really good. Additionally, of the SMBs surveyed, how many were attacked in the past year, right? It's increasing from over half to near 2/3. So what I want to get at here is there's no security in anonymity anymore, right? So just because you don't have a brand name of Google or Facebook, you're still a target for attack, and that's because attackers are increasingly using automation, right? Rather than having to individually target somebody. So everyone's pretty vulnerable here. That's everybody. Okay, so that's kind of the landscape, right? That was just setting the stage. Basically, everyone's a target, and it's pretty costly. So now I want to think about different types of attacks. We're actually going to put ourselves in the attacker's shoes here and set up some different scenarios so we can think about how to defend them. So this is sort of an exercise. Feel free to think through this as we're going through this. And it's also really hard. This is why security professionals make the big bucks. So before we do that, though, a Q&A. The difference is I'm going to do all the questions and all the answers on this one. We'll do a real Q&A at the end. OK, so first question. Aren't Macs secure? Right? I thought only Windows can get malware and bad stuff. No. Macs can be secure. Apple actually provides a lot of great security features directly in the operating system, but you have to enforce them or turn them on with management, right? If you just have the Wild West out there and employees can turn it off, it only takes one person to compromise your entire org, right? So that's not really effective organization level security unless you're doing management. My company's small, no one wants to attack us. We talked about this. Anonymity doesn't work anymore. There's too much automation. You can write a script to probe the entire internet and just get everybody with a vulnerable endpoint, right? And the third one, isn't security's job to do? Not IT? I'm in IT, not security. If you can't see that emoji there, that's a face palm. No, security is everybody's job, and especially IT's, right? IT has unique advantages. A lot of security is about training employees, because a lot of the attacks are coming in through phishing and other social engineering attacks, and that's a really unique opportunity. IT does employee training for IT, right? Ostensibly, you also have management. And so you really have a unique platform as the IT person to make one of the biggest impacts, if not the biggest impact, on security, ironically. Sometimes even more than security. OK, so let's think about a quick framework for understanding different types of attacks. And again, I recommend the DBIR highly if you haven't read it. Just Google Verizon DBIR. So let's start with physical versus remote access, right? Physical is, can the attacker touch the machine? There are certain attacks people can do when they have physical access that they can't do remotely, right? Or are they trying to gain access remotely over the network? Insider or outsider? Whole different class of attacks and prevention and mitigation strategies, depending on who you're dealing with. We're going to focus on outsiders today. And then is it targeted or opportunistic? This is really important. Does the attacker have specific knowledge about your org, or have they worked to gain that, looking at social media or other things like that? That can increase the chances of pulling off a successful social engineering attack. Or did they just see an opportunity and seize it? So we'll talk about a few different scenarios. And while we're talking about them, think about those axes: physical versus remote, insider versus outsider, and targeted versus opportunistic. Scenario one, you're at your friendly neighborhood Starbucks in Moscow. It's actually not you. Your CEO's there on business. She walks in. She orders a coffee and sits down, right? You all know how Starbucks works. You open your laptop and you start working. They're making your coffee. It's a latte. It's not a drip, so she didn't just get it right away. Her name gets called. She gets up, goes over to get the coffee, and she starts chatting with the barista for a minute. She's fluent in Russian, by the way, so it's really, really great. Meanwhile, that took about a minute and a half, right? The attacker walks over, restarts the CEO's laptop in target disk mode, copies the home folder to their device and restarts it again, so it looks like nothing happened, and you are pwned, right? So that was a pwned at Starbucks in Moscow scenario. Okay, so physical versus remote. What was that one? Insider versus outsider. And targeted versus opportunistic? You guys are good. Okay, that's awesome. Was this preventable? Very much so, right? Via disencryption. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple more scenarios, and we're going to look at that framework, and then we're going to see how we might have prevented something like this from happening, or mitigate it after the fact if it's not preventable, as you may see in the next one. Scenario 2, airline. Okay. Your director of product is coming back from a work trip. It was a really stressful work trip, so they have a lot of work to do, but they also had a couple drinks on board. They got coupons. Unfortunately, he forgot his laptop on a plane, right? Actually, real talk, how many of you, and I've had this happen as an IT director a gazillion times, how many people have had lost devices in their fleet? Awesome, yeah, super fun. Cool, so someone got a hold of the laptop, turned it on, target mode, got the files. What's the difference here? Is this opportunistic, physical or remote, and insider or outsider? Okay, cool. This is just practice. That was the same as the one before. Trick question. Awesome. Yeah. So disencryption, but the difference here is the director of product doesn't have the device after, right? Whereas before the CEO had the device. So we also want remote lock or wipe, right? That would be awesome to have just as an extra preventative measure. Hopefully we're also encrypted too. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Scenario 3. This is your office. This is your engineering team. Just put yourself right there. Okay. So an engineer checks their email. They get an email from Google requesting that they reauthorize the OAuth app they're developing, right? It's really important to do that. You got to be authed. They click the link. They enter their G Suite credentials. They're a super admin, obviously, by the way. Yeah. So the attacker actually sent that email to your entire org. They actually profiled your org on LinkedIn, the entire Eng-org, excuse me. Sent it out, and they know who the VP of engineering is, so they put something about this is from the VP, and it looked like it was official from Google too. They set up a web server with a fake login page, right? And it looked really good. And right when your engineer entered the credentials, they tried to use that to get into their email, and then they did password resets on GitHub and own prod. That's bad. Okay, physical or remote? Great. Insider, outsider? Outsider was the perpetrator, right? The insider was susceptible. They were the victim in this case. Hopefully this is an outsider, yeah. And then targeted versus opportunistic. Okay, cool. So preventable? Possibly, actually, yes. There's something called Chrome Password Alert that we'll show you in a minute that's actually really cool. And also, hopefully you have 2FA, right? So if you input your engineer puts their username and password in, even if they put in 2FA, maybe the attacker's sort of being slow, or maybe it just expired and they didn't get in. So it's just another level of complexity and a hurdle to get beyond. Who has mandatory 2FA on G Suite or Office 365? Oh man, we got to get that to 100%, 100%. Okay. Last scenario, this is the fourth one. This is your office, the front desk. I tried to find a better picture, but Google Image Search does not have a good front desk one. Okay, so your office manager is at the office. She gets an email with an attachment from her manager, and she downloads it and opens it. Cool. Yeah, the attacker just sent out a mass email to like a bajillion email addresses that they just found in a dump of compromised emails online. The malware got installed, and also the drive was encrypted. So this is malware and ransomware all in one, just for the purposes of this exercise. They demand some Bitcoin and your phone. Okay, right? Physical or remote? Insider, outsider? Targeted, opportunistic? Yeah, this one, I put opportunistic, but I actually think you're right. I think it's a hybrid, right? They're sending it to a lot of people, so they're targeting a lot of people, but it's also sort of opportunistic because it's so mass, it sort of doesn't matter, right? So is it preventable? Maybe and maybe not, right? A couple thoughts here. One is a lot of malware takes advantage of known vulnerabilities in unpatched systems. That's kind of the easy way out, right? If you know that there are a lot of unpatched systems out there and the vulnerability has been reported, why wouldn't you just push out an exploit for that? It's super easy, right? You don't have to find a new vulnerability. So keeping everything patched to the latest version, especially macOS, which includes security updates in almost all of their OS updates, right? And then also backing up, right? If you get ransomware, but you have a backup, you can say, get out of here to the attacker because you have a backup and you can get back to work. You don't have to pay the ransom so you can get your disk unlocked. Cool. So those are 4 scenarios. Hopefully that was an interesting way to think about these attacks and sort of think about the differences and what categories of prevention and remediation strategies can help. And you saw they were different, right? And so you want to have something that can help you do all those. So let's move on here. I'll hand it over to Frank, and we'll talk a little about prevention and some mitigation too.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. There are a lot of great tools out there, and really, if Fleetsmith can help you out, that's awesome. But what's more important to us is that you feel enabled to solve these problems on your own and to protect your fleet. So we'll be going through how you can solve these problems in Fleetsmith pretty much in real time. And so hopefully what you take away from this is that it's not as daunting as it looks, and it's not as time consuming, and that really anyone can do it. So let's start with how to get started with Fleetsmith. Getting started is as easy as clicking sign up for free with G Suite or Office 365, and here's what it looks like. Ooh.
Ooh. Just like that.
Yeah. So it takes about 10 seconds to get started. There are no extra usernames or passwords. It's just SSO with G Suite or Office 365, and you get to piggyback on the 2FA of G Suite and Office 365 without any added work. And once again, everyone should have mandatory 2FA turned on. So in Fleetsmith, there are 3 steps to deploying apps and settings. It's number 1, find your app in the Fleetsmith catalog of apps and settings. Number 2, add the app to the global profile to deploy fleet-wide securely over the internet. And actually, there is no step 3. That's it. And it's really that simple. So let's take a look at that in our scenarios. We have Starbucks and airplane. These are preventable scenarios in the sense of data loss, right? These are focused on physical opportunistic attacks, which can be prevented and mitigated with disk encryption and remote lock and wipe. So let's see how we can do that in Fleetsmith. So what we're looking at here is a filtered view of our catalog. So you would start here. You would search disk encryption. You see how a file pops up? It's not added to a global profile yet. So all you do is add it to a global profile. Click add. And there you go. And that's pretty much it. Optionally, we can set an enforcement date so that devices restart and begin encryption at the time and date that you set. But you're basically done at this point. For those of you who work in distributed organizations, a cool thing that we offer is enforcement in local device time. So you can send one email out to the whole org saying your devices will be updated at noon, and noon will be local time noon to that device. So there's no more time zone calculations for each one. Next, we'll look at remote lock and wipe in Fleetsmith. This uses the Apple MDM protocol. So what we're looking at is an individual device page, which shows a bunch of fleet intelligence information and allows you to take action on the device. In this case, we'll click remote lock, and after we confirm the device, we'll immediately receive the lock command, and the unlock pin will show up here. It's fairly straightforward and very self-explanatory. Now, with scenarios 3 and 4, it's your engineering team, your office manager. These scenarios focus on remote attacks. The attack on the engineering team was opportunistic. Some of them, while the attack on the office was office manager, could be a little more targeted. For prevention and remediation, let's look at a few of the one-click options that we have in Fleetsmith regarding patch management, Google Chrome password alert, Google Santa, and some backups. So regarding patch management, so we all want to be on the latest version of the OS that you're on. So in this case, let's use High Sierra. And this is really fun. This is really cool. You can update your entire fleet to the latest version super fast. Now, the process might look familiar. It's the same process as we were doing with other apps. And without Fleetsmith, this could be a 20+ step manual process. This kind of breaks it down to very few, maybe 1 or 2 steps. So keeping your fleet updated to the latest version of macOS really prevents an entire class of malware attacks that take advantage of vulnerabilities in unpatched devices. You'll see that we have the optional enforcement date here as well. Now moving on, we also want to deploy apps such as Chrome. You may be familiar with deploying Chrome via Fleetsmith because it's really just like any other app again. As soon as you hit that save button, Fleetsmith will automatically package and deploy Chrome and keep it updated to the latest version from that point on. So in addition to packaging, deploying, the optional enforcement, and updating, we also offer some really cool client-side config for a lot of our apps, including Chrome. So here in Chrome, you can see how you'd one-click deploy a bunch of Chrome extensions. And you can also see the thing for password alert as well. So password alert is a Google tool that immediately tells you when an employee enters their G Suite credentials on a non-Google domain. So you can really detect those like phishing opportunities. It can also immediately expire the password to prevent further damage. And you can deploy it client-side in Fleetsmith. And here you can also see there's server settings. So all you have to do is deploy the server. And automatically your fleet will be secure with Chrome with password alert. Now let's take a look at Google Santa. Again, very similar, very easy process to deploy Google Santa. Santa is an open source binary blacklisting app created at Google. And it's just another one of these apps in Fleetsmith that offers a lot of client-side configuration. So you just to deploy it globally, all you can do is just deploy it globally, and then you enter the hashes, the certificates, or the directories that you want to blacklist, and those executables will be blocked at the kernel level, and that's really cool. This is awesome for blocking known malware, preventing updates to apps that you need to test before you want employees installing them. And Santa requires a kernel extension because it blocks at the kernel level. So at Fleetsmith, we built automatic kernel extension whitelisting for apps for you to manage, so you don't even have to think about that aspect. We actually think Google Santa is so cool. We wrote a blog post about it. I highly encourage you guys to check it out. This is just really a plug for Google Santa. But it's super cool. Definitely check it out. So you may have noticed how easy all that was to deploy apps and settings. That's because Fleetsmith really tries to automatically take care of detecting new app releases, really downloading the packages, repackaging it, all the client-side configuration you might have to do, the deploying it to the fleet, and really handling the employee end experience as well. And as part of Fleetsmith's zero-touch deployment, new devices are secure right out of the box. So we want to help by offering deployment research and best practices as a service for every app and setting that you manage, without requiring a ton of research, custom scripting, and debugging, and all of that. Our catalog already has tons of apps and settings, and we're adding more every day. So this slide shows a few, but not even close to all. All the additional apps and settings we offer in our catalog. And right now, new catalog apps and settings are mainly driven by customer demand. So let us know if there are any apps that you're looking for, and we'll see what we can do to add them. And yeah, come by the booth, and we'll be happy to show some of these apps that we didn't get to really run through. And our goal here is to really empower you to get your fleet as secure as possible and as easily as possible. So hopefully, based off what you're seeing today, you feel like being a security hero is sort of within reach. And thank you so much for that, and I'll throw it back to Zach.
Cool. Thanks, Ray. That was awesome. So I'm going to wrap it up. This is going to be one of the quicker sessions today. But actually, when we show Fleetsmith to potential customers, we usually just actually show the product because it kind of explains itself. I want to call out a couple differentiators, though, between some of the other options out there on the market. One is how you try and buy it, how you evaluate it. We offer 10 devices for free forever. And like Frank showed, actually creating a Fleetsmith account takes 10 seconds. So you can actually start managing your fleet in 10 seconds. Single sign-on with G Suite or Office 365, self-serve, no jump start, no 650-page admin manual. It's a product, not a tool, right? So this is real zero-touch deployment. It's not only enrolling it in dep, it's enrolling it in dep and also immediately provisioning it with all the latest versions of the apps and settings you want and keeping those up to date forever, and creating the local user account via our integrations with G Suite and Office 365. So it's actually a true zero-touch deployment. I think that term gets thrown around loosely, and it shouldn't. Also, never do patch management again, right? If you don't want to, right? Or if you do it, you can do a hybrid approach where we'll handle everything in the catalog, and if you have custom apps or settings you want to do, you can absolutely do those too and pull them down with custom scripts or config management, right? Lastly, secure by design. So we push out security best practices on the first day. You can do that with Fleetsmith. And it's also the most secure fleet management product on the market. So would love to get a little more into depth with anybody who's curious about that. But we built it secure by design from day one. Secrets management and production from day one. My co-founder and CSO, Jesse Endall, is giving a talk at Black Hat. I mean, we take it really seriously. And so as you're looking around and evaluating, I'd suggest and recommend asking people what their security story is. I think we have a pretty good one. And last is the booth. So I'm Zack, that's Frank. Dave and Brandon are in the back, and we're in the pink hoodies. Socks have arrived if you haven't gotten Fleetsmith socks. Do you have a demo of the socks, Frank?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there we go. And we can actually do a full live demo at the booth, right? We can show you the full catalog. We can show you, what it looks like on a real device, what inventory looks like, what the fleet intelligence side looks like, and all that good stuff. So with that, I want to open it up to for real Q&A, not just me. In the back, hold on, not going to actually throw it here, but I was tempted. I know. I want to take out other attendees.
That's all right. Take them all out.
Oh, that's cool.
So you mentioned you just put your apps in the global catalog. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, Fleetsmith actually offers that catalog, so all of our customers can get those apps and settings.
Can you deploy apps based on, not globally, but based on criteria? For instance, like we would want to encrypt the laptops, but not the desktops. Is there a way to do that?
There is, yeah. So we have this concept called profiles. You can kind of think of it as groups.
Okay.
And you could just say, these are laptops, these are desktops. Don't put disk encryption in the global profile, only put it in the laptop profile, for example.
Okay.
We've heard that before, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So it's kind of like a two-level. You have your global catalog and then any other criteria you have.
Exactly. It's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up. All devices get everything in the global catalog, and then you can optionally add a second profile, the global profile. Right. You can optionally add a second, more specific profile that'll sort of mask and do additional or slightly different customization for that group.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There's actually 2 more levels, right? The user could also have a profile as well as the device. So
you can assign a secondary profile to the user or to the device. So if you assign it to the user, all of their devices would get that secondary profile, and then you can kind of override it too at the device level. Yeah.
Hi there. I see on your site you have that feature for key escrow for File Vault. Could you go over that, just a quick overview a little bit more there? Like, if I understand right, like the keys up on over there, are they mostly just for like IT people only to access?
Yeah, thank you for asking about key escrow. So yes, so when you say you have a new device, you've connected Fleetsmith with dep or your MDM provider, you ship it out to the employee turns it on. It encrypts and escrows the key right away. And so by escrow, we mean we securely transfer it to our servers and store it encrypted at rest. So it's all encrypted the whole time. you can actually reveal that key inside the device detail page. And then as the IT admin, you know, let's say the user had a password and you don't know what it is, which you shouldn't know what the user's password is, right? You need to get into that computer. You can still get in, even if you don't know their username or password, with the file vault recovery key.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically a way to gain access to the device and specifically to unlock it if it's encrypted, like it should be.
All right.
For you. Yeah.
Perfect.
That was one of my questions. So this is probably an obvious one, but are you just Mac, or do you?
I think that's a great question. Yeah, so currently we're just Mac. We recently announced upcoming support for iOS and tvOS as well. So we'll be all Apple devices, and that's coming really soon.
Okay, but no Windows, no Chrome, no.
No Windows, no Chrome,
Okay.
no Android, yeah.
And then, so my other question was the app repository. You can add apps to that, right? It's not.
Fleetsmith adds apps to that all the time. So if you wanted an app to be added to our catalog, you might send a note in and Frank would take a look at it and potentially add it. Most of the apps in our catalog are customer demanded. If you wanted a custom app that was only for your organization, what we've seen most people do there is put it in an S3 bucket and then deploy it with a custom script.
Okay.
So curl, run it through installer. That's it.
All right, thanks.
Sure. Up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Hooray.
Hi. So, looks like a lot of the configuration is done over the web UI. Is there a way? So I kind of have two questions related to this, but they're getting at the same point. Is there a way to have a secondary admin approve actions that are done in the web UI, so that you can't have a rogue admin, for example, go in and do bad stuff? And then in a sort of related to that, is there a textual or API base or something that you can run configuration through, such that we could commit it into like source control so that you can get logging and stuff like that for the configuration?
Gotcha. So to answer your first question, kind of about two-man rule, so to speak,
Yeah.
the answer is no right now. So you'd want to scope access very tightly.
Okay.
And the second answer is we do currently log MDM actions. So in the device detail page in that video, and I can show you later, there's a event history that shows that. That's kind of the current level of detail though. So any actions taken on that device on the right side would get logged there.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just the UI. So there's no other access to that information right now. Yeah. Any other questions with the catch box? You can throw it. We've tried that now, it worked. No? All right. Well, hopefully that was the quickest session of the day and also somewhat informative and helpful. Oh, one more. Can we throw it back?
Where? Back here?
Nice.
These socks. Tell us more.
Yeah. So people like the dog, the logo, and we got socks made with the dog on it, and they're available downstairs at the booth. Just look for the pink hoodies. So the booth is, if you're going toward the coffee, out by the two big rooms there, just make a left, and we're in that first spot. Those AV guys usually have the World Cup going, so we're right next to them.
Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for coming.